We're going to talk about what it means to go from bad credit to good credit and how that can improve your debt payoff strategy.
Yeah, I think this is a great topic, and I'm looking forward to helping people understand what the data has shown us and how they can apply these great lessons to their own credit. I think at the end of the day, we want people to pay less money. We want them to get out of debt. And if these insights can help them make the right choices, then I think that's what we're here for.
Awesome. So let's just give you a little bit of information about what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about someone that we've called Ollie. That's not his real name, but the data is real. This is real credit file data, and we look at it over 18 months. So let's jump right in and let's talk about Ollie in terms of where do we find Ollie. Ollie started out with a 575 credit score. Just to give you perspective, 575 is not great, which means that the only kinds of loans you're going to be qualified for with a 575 are non-prime or subprime lending. These are personal loans or payday loans or very high, like title loans. They're going to be very expensive, interest rates well above 36% at this credit score. He has currently 4 open credit accounts, 1 credit card, which is maxed out, meaning his utilization is 100%. He's got a couple of car loans and a personal loan. And 3 of those accounts were opened in the last 6 months before we saw him. And that means very new to credit, very low average age of credit. And he does have over $2,000 in collections. That's where we found him.
Ollie's not in a great situation here.
And this is what his journey looked like from a credit score standpoint. He moved from a 575 to a 709. And it looks like it took him about 19 months. But, and here's the but, if you look closely, things look pretty flat from month 0 all the way to about month 13, right? It's bouncing up. He might be improving slightly. But his real improvement came in months 16, 17, and 18. What I really want you to look at is this idea of that blue line. That blue line is his utilization. And when we say 100% utilization, that means his credit card was completely maxed out. His balance was above the amount that he was able to charge.
Yeah, not a good situation.
Not a good situation. But one of the things that we found when we analyzed 10 million credit files is that there is a very direct correlation between your credit utilization and your credit score. And let me show you how that plays out in Ollie's score. Look at the moments in which Ollie drops his utilization. These are big moments, and there's a couple others in there, but I want you to see exactly what happens to his credit score at those moments. Every time he drops his utilization, his credit score goes up. It's a very clear relationship. And the inverse is true. Check out those moments where he pops above 100, back to 100% in his utilization, and look what happens to his credit score. Those are the 2 big dips. And what I want to stress to you is we are not talking about a lot of money here. Ollie doesn't have $10,000 worth of credit card debt. He has a credit limit of $300. That's a secured credit card, which means he put $300 in so that he could get a credit limit of $300. And you can see that he only has 1 card and his credit utilization maps exactly to his credit card balance. So we're not talking about a lot of money for Ollie. $100 made a significant difference in changing the trajectory of his credit score.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at this too, and again, Ollie's not his real name and we don't know him, we just have his data. He did a really good job. He really did over time of really pulling his credit utilization down, getting his credit score up, setting himself up for, lower interest loans, lower interest car payments, lower interest mortgage.
One of the things that we identified by studying 10 million credit files is that for every 10 percentage points that you drop your utilization, your credit score should go up 10 to 15 points. When you look across all the credit files that we did, that relationship is pretty clear. So whatever you do, if you have a higher credit utilization, or even if you have a 30% credit utilization, if you move it to a 20% credit utilization, you should see 10 to 15 points improvement on your credit score.
Yeah, meaningful, very meaningful.
All right, let's talk about his average age of his newest accounts. If you take all of the credit accounts that he has, what's the average number of months that they've been open? And these got to be active credit accounts, which means that if you have a credit card that has been open for 15 years, but you haven't used it in 5 years, it's not actually counted towards your age of newest open account. He brought on quite a bit of credit right before we started looking at him. And that means that his average age of credit was fairly low. It wasn't great. And he needed to improve that. The longer you have an average age of credit, the more creditors and the credit scoring agencies feel comfortable that you're being responsible with your credit and you're not just chasing credit at every opportunity.
The more data, the longer they have, the more they understand whether you're going to default or not. And so it's just better to have, a longer track record of you making payments on time, which will increase your credit score, which will give people confident that you'll pay them back. And for me, that's the takeaway is we're all going to start off in the same spot. But once we start, we need to make sure we have the right behaviors that are going to lead to long-term, success.
That's right. And when we start looking at it mapped against the credit score, it's a little harder to see because age of newest account is not a super powerful indicator of your credit score, but it is correlated. And you can see that as he lengthens out that length of time, he's not chasing additional credit. It is accretive to his credit score over time. Let's take a look at one of the biggest things that he had on his account, and that is he had collections, and collections are never good.
Let's pause for a second. So why don't you tell people in layman's term what the collection really is?
Collections isn't just a late payment. It's not even just 90 days late and your credit card is coming after you. A collection is a very specific thing where an unpaid debt is actually sold to a debt collection agency who attempts to collect that debt, which means that, let's say you haven't paid your credit card in 6 months and the credit card is like, well, we've done everything we can to get the money out of you. And they sell that debt to a third party and they write that off, which means it's no longer on their books. And the third-party collection agency now is the one to come after you. That is the official definition of what a collection is. If a credit card is selling $1,000 of your debt to a collection company, they're not selling it for $1,000. They're not even selling it for $500. It's very possible that they're selling that debt to the collection agency for pennies on the dollar.
Which means you should negotiate.
Yes, if you've got collections, you should negotiate because the collection agency doesn't need to get every dollar out of you in order to make a sizable amount of money. So if you can, what they're going to do is they're going to try to get every dollar out of you and keep stringing you along and keep getting a payment until they can get as much. So when you talk to them, make sure that if you're locking down your collections, you're saying, hey, I want it in writing that if I give you X number of dollars, you will wipe out the rest of the collections. If you don't get that in writing, they're just going to take your money and then come back for you for the balance as well. So that's what a collection is. And it's so problematic on your credit score because remember, a credit score is all about predicting whether you will default on a loan. And if you've got collection accounts and you're not able to pay your bills, the credit scoring agencies truly look at you and say they are likely to default again.
So let's see, what is the impact of when the collection balance goes away?
Yeah, check this out. So you can see that Ollie had an amount, that $2,000 that for 18 months, he held on to. And then at the very end, he got that collections wiped out. Whether he negotiated it or whether he paid it in full, we're not absolutely sure. But what we do know is it disappeared off of his credit file. And that one thing alone jumped his credit score 44 points. Now, 44 points, 40 points is really significant because every 40 points that you increase your credit score, that is a new credit band. That means that you go from bad to poor, or from poor to fair, or every 40 points means that you have better access to credit and cheaper access to credit.
If you have a bad credit score, you get bad interest rates, which likely means you're setting yourself up for not being able to pay them back or have some defaults, which then keep you at a lower credit score. And it's just a vicious cycle. These are some hard lessons, but if we can help you get out of them, you're going to have a much better financial future.
So here's the interesting thing to keep in mind. Let's say Ollie is where he is. What does he need a better credit score for, right? I mean, if he's not going to go out and get more debt, if he's stable where he is, why does it actually matter that he improves his credit score? Because if he has a personal loan right now, it's not like a better credit score is going to automatically drop his credit, his average interest that he pays. That's just going to stay stable. But the reason it matters is check out where Ollie stands in terms of, and over the 18 months, 19 months, he was able to get it down to $13,000 because he was making his payments and he was paying it down. But here's the thing. Whatever debt he acquired when his score was 575 is almost certainly going to be a much higher interest rate than he can now get at 709, which means that whatever that $13,000 is, he should try to refinance it, go to another lender, find out whether you can get approved for a significantly lower interest rate. And if you can get a significantly lower interest rate on that $13,000 and you don't extend out the term so that you're not paying longer and you keep your monthly payment the same, you will be paying more to principal and you will accelerate your debt payoff strategy. Right now, on the trajectory he's on, he's almost certainly going to take another 2-3 years to get out of debt. He could chop that in 6 months or a year by refinancing and putting more of that payment towards principal instead of interest.
And what's amazing about that is if he does that, it'll only make his credit score go higher, which means he'll even get lower interest rates.
Once he gets to about a 730 credit score, he's not likely to need a much higher one. He's probably going to get the best interest rates that you can get. So he's nearly to the point where he no longer has to worry about growing his credit score. All he needs to he just needs to maintain it, and he needs to work on his debt payoff strategy. So he's really in a good position. He's done all the right things to put himself in a position of success for the near term and the long term.
Any last thoughts that you might want to tell people, like where to start first, where to go first, how to think about this first? Because sometimes the first step is usually the hardest step.
Yeah.
You might not be able to do certain things anymore, but what would you recommend?
You know, one of the most important things that I think people need to face is just look at it rationally. You know, the stress can often make you not want to deal with it, not want to open the bills, not want to address it. And the reality is things will always get better for you if you face it head on. And so what you need to do is sit down, look at your situation, look at your excess, where you can pay off debt, what the pinch points are, and start making a plan. And it's really hard for us to tell you exactly what to do depending on your personal circumstance, but there are a lot of resources at the Yukon Project that can help you kind of unravel exactly what credit scores do, how they work, and what can apply for you. If you are really deep, if you really are having a hard time and you seriously don't know how to get out of your situation, seek out a credit counselor. These are professionals that this is what they do. And if you can find one at a nonprofit organization, even better, because they don't have the profit motive. They're just there to help and try to help you get out of debt.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. There are always options.
There are always options, and you should look into them. There's hope. You can do this. Ollie did it, and we believe you can do it too. And our hope and our mission is to put everybody on better financial footing.